everyone. Thank you so much for joining tonight. If you're watching or listening, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Today, I am talking to Sasha P, as he is known on Instagram. You may know him from Instagram, or you may have seen him recently on some interviews with sports card therapists or with Sports Cards Live with Jeremy Lee recently. First of all, Sasha, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this interview.
Thanks for having me on, Kurt. I'm excited to speak with you.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We've been trying to get you on for a while. You and I have been going back and forth quite a bit lately. In fact, real quick story. I went out to New York City recently for a conference for work. While I was out there, Sasha Instagram messaged me because he noticed I was located in New York at that time. And he said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" I told him, and he's like, "Well, let's go hang out. Let's go meet up somewhere." And so we met up at the Bleecker Street Sports Card shop on Bleecker Street in New York City. I guess technically it's Greenwich area, I suppose, technically.
Yeah, Chelsea Tribeca. It's called Bleecker Trading.
Yeah. So we met up there, talked a long time about cards we enjoy collecting, of course, and all those things. Looked at their inventory in the shop and saw everything overpriced, so we didn't really buy anything. But that's cool. I understand. You own a shop in Bleecker Street in Greenwich. I understand you probably have high overhead, so it's all good. But no, it was a good time. I appreciate you giving me the invite to come meet up with you out there, and I really enjoyed chatting with you and just meeting you.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you in person and talking cards.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and sort of explain to everyone kind of how you got started in the hobby and kind of what led to you being a collector right now.
Yeah, so I got back into the hobby when I was a kid in 2005. Like everyone else, I was ripping packs at my local hobby shop. And the first pack I ever ripped had a kind of beginner's luck, and I pulled Andrew Bogut, who at the time was the #1 overall draft pick in the NBA, his rookie autograph. And, of course, it was a $5 pack. And at the time, it was a $500 card, rookie autograph, the #1 pick. It was a big deal. And as a kid, I was immediately just on collecting. And from there, just took off.
Good old Andrew Bogut, huh? That's your guy?
Yeah, I mean, so it just got me wanting to rip more and more packs. And as I ripped more and more packs, learned of my local teams. I grew up in Boston, so I was collecting the Celtics. Big Paul Pierce fan. And yeah, then started collecting the legends, Bill Russell, Bob Cousy. And it really took a life of its own over the years.
And so your time frame when you were primary collecting, I believe, was around, based off of our conversations from earlier, was around probably the early 2010s is when, or was it late 2000s, early 2010s is when you started really getting heavily into it?
Yeah, so I really collected from about 05 till 2011, 2012, right around when Panini actually came into the industry. I really, at the time, Upper Deck really started pumping out a lot of product, trying to get rid of their inventory. Their quality control went way down, and I really didn't know what Panini was going to do in the industry. So kind of the uncertainty kind of killed the interest for me, and I left the hobby around 2012.
So what brought you back into the hobby, and what is it that you're collecting currently?
Yeah, like everyone else, went home during the pandemic, watched The Last Dance, and immediately was like, hey, I have cards from when I was a kid. Dug those out of my storage unit and started pulling out a lot of my cards, right? And it was interesting. I had probably over 100 rookie autographs of Avery Bradley, who was a first-round draft pick by the Celtics in 2008, 09, I believe. And I thought he was going to be a big deal in the sport and kind of went big on him. And, I mean, he surely didn't really pan out all that well. But, I had a lot of other cards, and the ones that really struck a chord with me were a lot of actually my signed vintage cards. I had a few from when I was a kid, and those were the ones that retained the value the best. And that's since I've kind of got back into the hobby about 3 years ago, I've been kind of full head on focused on signed vintage.
Yeah, let's talk about the signed vintage, because I think that is something that you and I have a real shared interest in. What is it? What was it about the signed vintage that really got you kind of started, really getting heavily into collecting it, and talk about some of the things that you've started collecting over this time period that involves the signed vintage.
Yeah, it actually all started when I was a kid in about 2008 when 0708 Topps came out. It was the Topps product. They had Greg Oden and Bill Russell on the cover of the product. And back then, every hobby shop would get kind of a product flyer, and it's kind of a marketing tool for the hobby shops to kind of promote what the product was going to be, what's in every pack, what do the inserts look like, what are the chase hits. And it was kind of this pamphlet that I guess the Topps would hand out to the hobby shops, and they kind of would use it to promote the new boxes that were coming out. So at the time, I was looking through the pamphlet when Topps, the flagship product, came out in 0708. And at the time, the chase hit was a buyback 1957 Topps, Bill Russell, signed rookie autograph, Beckett slab. And it was a 101 buyback. And it was a gorgeous looking card, and it was signed in silver ink. And when I saw that card, I knew I had to have it. It just looked amazing. And to me at the time, it was kind of my grail. And so I spent a lot of my allowance money growing up ripping 0708 Topps, the top regular packs, the jumbo packs at the time. And unfortunately didn't pull that card, of course. So being upset and all, I decided that I'm going to figure out another way to do it. And I said, well, look, that one was a buyback, insert into packs. Why don't I just recreate that on my own? And at the time, Bill Russell was signing at shows in Boston, in the greater Boston area, maybe once a year. So knowing this, I chased down a rookie card, purchased a rookie card, and then was able to meet Bill Russell at the show and get him to sign the card in silver Sharpie. And this is that card, and I still have that card to this day. And it's inscribed number 6, which is obviously, of course, the retired jersey number league-wide now.
That's still pretty awesome. Okay, so started with Bill Russell. So now what is that kind of looking like for you?
Yeah, so start off with Bill Russell. At the time, I didn't really know where I was going to go with it. Started kind of pursuing other Hall of Fame rookie autographs, seeing as there's so many Boston Celtics. So one got Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale. Thought it'd be really cool to chase down the iconic triple Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Julius Erving triple rookie autograph. So I went and got that one signed. So I have that one. It's graded a 7 with a 10 autograph for all 3. And very quickly, I decided, hey, why not? I have some of the bigger names. Why don't I just go after the signed rookie of the greatest 50 players of all time? And since then, 2 years ago for the 75th anniversary, they obviously came out with the updated list with the 75 greatest NBA players of all time. So I kind of went ahead and picked up the recent 25 and been trying to just get all 75 as much as I can. And so it's been quite the chase and adventure over the last couple of years. But I've now have 72 out of 75.
Okay, 72. Now, I think last time you and I talked, you were at 71. So what's the newest addition to that collection?
I actually was able to find a signed 2003 Topps Carmelo Anthony rookie card.
Nice. Yeah, so for your collection, your preference for a lot of the modern guys is getting the flagship Topps card signed, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I'm picking the iconic rookie card for each player. So it's not the rarest, it's not the most desirable. Just what's the most iconic? If you went up to anyone in the hobby and said, "Hey, what is LeBron James rookie card?" What is the first thing that most people would say? Those are the ones that I'm going after.
Sure. We'll talk about that because I can imagine how difficult it must be to try and find an autograph version, if it's a Topps card for these players, because a few of them don't really sign Topps products, obviously, like LeBron and a few other of the modern guys. So yeah, could you talk about the difficulty of trying to find those Topps cards signed by some of those players right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, so for modern day, since Panini took over, most of the iconic rookies would be Panini products. So anyone in the 2012 or 2013 draft class, they would be their Panini base card, not their Topps base card, because of course they didn't have one. So Giannis Antetokounmpo is the youngest player in the greatest 75. So he's the most recent rookie out of the 75. So he's the most recent card, which would be the 2013 Prism. So I went after his signed on card, no sticker. I know some products they kind of bought back some of the rookies, put stickers on the card. We're going after signed in-person versions of the iconic card. The whole purpose is so that the player touched the card, he signed it, we know it's authentic. I don't like stickers. I'm concerned they peel over time. So it's very important for the autograph to be on card. Now back to your original question about Topps. So of course, some athletes, to every card, to every athlete, there's a unique story, as I like to say. So in the case of LeBron James, he's obviously an Upper Deck exclusive. So he doesn't sign Topps cards. So given that, hey, when you ask someone, what is LeBron James rookie card? Well, more often than not, they'll say 2003 Topps, right? So I was able to acquire a signed version of that card, and it's currently a Pop 4. So very few have been graded. I've actually seen all 4 of them, and every single one was actually signed in 2004, right when Topps, the flagship product, came out initially, his rookie year, and before he signed with Upper Deck and became an exclusive. So there was kind of that window from when the product came out, before he became an Upper Deck exclusive, that some people who brought him the cards, he was willing to sign them for. Now PSA knows the difficulties of getting it signed. He refuses to sign that card since then, given his contract with Upper Deck. So PSA does not grade these easily by any means. I know some people who claim they have one, they've tried to get it graded, and PSA won't slap it. So the one I actually had, the only way PSA would slap it was me and the gentleman who obtained it had to provide photo evidence of LeBron signing it. And luckily enough, the gentleman who got it back in 2004 had the foreshadow of taking a photo of young LeBron signing the card. And we had to print out that photo and submit it with the card to PSA, and they were finally willing to slap it.
Very cool. I could just imagine like an old, I don't know, disposable camera roll that still had that picture or something, and you had to go get it. Yeah, like process the old-fashioned way or something. No,
yeah, exactly.
It's incredible thinking about how long ago 2004 was at this point, and yeah, that's incredible to get a piece like that, because like you said, if you try to give anything to LeBron James to sign that is not an Upper Deck exclusive something, then he absolutely will not sign it. And as a matter of fact, I don't really think he really does signings in general anymore for just about anything, unless it's like a very exclusive event for Upper Deck or Fanatics or something like that.
Yeah, he's an Upper Deck exclusive, so he does occasional signings for Upper Deck specifically. That's the only way they maintain merchandise in their store, right? But very rare.
Yeah.
And you can't submit your own as well for that signing, right? He's just signing jerseys, balls, photos, kind of.
So you're at 72 now with the addition of Carmelo. So what are the 3 that you're missing currently?
The last 3 that I need, 2 are of the original 50. So one, arguably, in my opinion, has been the hardest for me to get. I don't know why. It's not the rarest, but for whatever reason, the signed 1957 Paul Arizon Topps rookie card, which is a Pop 8, has avoided me over the past 3 years. I've never seen one for sale at any price. Even name your price, I'll pay it kind of deal. I've seen 2, and they're in collections for people who are doing the same exact set that I'm doing. So they're not moving them anytime soon. So that leaves about 6 others out there, and I've never seen one. I've gone to every corner of the hobby seemingly and have yet to find one. So one day, hopefully, it'll pop up. The second, which will probably be my last, I'm saving it to be my last. It's probably the most expensive one. They're readily out there. Is a signed 1986 Fleer Michael Jordan card. Now, there's a whole controversy surrounding it. There are a lot of fakes that came out. I won't go into depth about that, but it makes it tricky to pick that one up. You need to make sure you do your due diligence and that the copy and example you're getting is authentic and that you don't have some disaster story 5-10 years down the road and you find out that the one you picked up was actually not real. And lastly, the third and last card I need is a 2012 Panini Prism signed base rookie card of Kawhi Leonard. He infamously does not sign. He doesn't sign for anyone. I actually recently went to a game a couple weeks ago, sat essentially courtside and tried to get it signing for anyone. And that is one that eludes me to this day still. So those are the last three. Paul Arizon, Michael Jordan, Kawhi Leonard, signed base rookies.
Yeah, there's just something about Kawhi. He just doesn't sign very often, right?
Yeah, he doesn't sign very often at all, and is actually one of the reasons why I started a Kawhi Leonard PC because of how difficult it is obtaining him from myself.
Yeah, we'll come back to that in a second. I want to talk about your Kauai PC in a second. So yeah, Paul Arizon, has been tricky to get for you. What were some of the other really difficult ones to obtain for your top 75 autograph set?
Again, a lot of them is you come back to rarity versus scarcity, right? Like the one I just picked up, Carmelo Anthony. Well, if you look in the pop, it's a pop 0. There are no signed 2003 Carmelo Anthony Topps cards, believe it or not, right? So you look at that and you're like, well, it doesn't even exist. How am I supposed to get it, right? Well, Carmelo Anthony's playing. He might have been forced into retirement, but he's still trying to make it in the league for maybe one last year kind of thing. So, and he actually released a book a couple years ago and did like a big book signing. So he does signings. You know, the guy's alive. You could chase him down maybe somewhere and get him to sign a couple cards, right? It's more of finding an event, tracking him down, maybe finding someone who might have gotten a card signed in years past, just never got it graded, right? So that's one where, you know, within time you'll find it. Just finding the right person or the right opportunity to get one. Then you have cards like Hal Greer, 1961 Fleer rookie. Last I checked, I believe it's a pop 9. They don't come to market very often. When I found mine, I was not a fan of how my transaction went down, but the gentleman who I bought it from, essentially, the one I was interested in, the gentleman was essentially having a private auction of sorts, and he was pairing me against other private buyers, and we were all kind of bidding each other in a private transaction type of manner. And it got so ridiculous and the price got so high that I bowed out, and another individual who had the card for his set, he actually was working on the signed 1961 Fleer set, not just greatest rookies, but just the 1961 Fleer signed set, which I believe you're working on, Kurt. He said, that price is so ridiculous, I'll sell you mine for half that. I was like, done. I don't want to deal with this anymore. So I took it and ran. That was a very bizarre situation. Was not a fan of it. And sometimes things like that happen when there's a very rare card and there are multiple people who are interested in it. All of a sudden, you know, just who has a bigger pocket, unfortunately, and who can pay more.
Yeah. I definitely. You and I have talked a lot about our shared interest in like the 61 Fleer set and some of those other vintage sets, and how crazy difficult it can be to find some of those Hall of Famers from those sets, and you know, there's cards from those sets that can really go into a lot of different collections because people are trying to get the completed set if possible, or people are trying to just get like the Hall of Famers from those sets, or top 50 guys or top 75 guys or whatever. And so, yeah, when you have some of those cards like Hal Greer come up, or like Bill Sharman's 57 tops, or Dolph Shay's 57 tops, or things of those natures that are like maybe 10 or so that are out there in existence, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, they can really go for a premium, and yeah, really it's because they don't come up very often. Public auctions for those almost never happen, so you almost have to make some sort of private deal with people who just have had them for a long time, and oftentimes they're very high on their price because a lot of times they don't want to necessarily move them unless they really get top dollar for them, and that's understandable. But it can be really tricky to pry those cards away from some of these collections.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the things that makes it so interesting in the kind of this niche of signed vintage is the amount of work required in like networking and meeting other collectors, right? So many of these cards, it's not a matter of can we just agree to a price? It's first you got to find it, right? Then you got to convince the person to like go with it, and then you got to figure out a price that you can both agree on, right? So before you can even just get to this negotiation step, there's so much work that goes into it where, I've networked and talked with collectors for many years, and all of a sudden something comes up in their life, they have to move something, and I immediately pop up in their minds. They say, hey, he needed something. I'm going to go to them, right? And all of a sudden, something that wasn't for sale for many years, all of a sudden the person's coming to you and saying, hey, I know you were interested in it. Do you still want it? And I mean, that's been some of the joy in this whole chase is the people I've met and the connections I've made, because I wouldn't have found many of these cards without it.
Absolutely. And honestly, yeah, it's really one of the things I have found the most interesting in terms of sort of refocusing my collection into sign vintage, and in particular like the 61 Fleer sign sets, is the work you have to do, the research you have to do. Like, it's not, you can't just go on Card Ladder or 130 point even and figure out what's the right value would be for some of these cards, and what the actual rarity is. You can't even really necessarily look at the PSA pop report to determine it a lot of times, because there's a lot of factors that we don't necessarily want to get into right now, probably, in terms of the weirdness of pop reports when it comes to some of these old signed cards. And like you said, you often have to really take time to network and connect with a bunch of old school collectors. People who are not putting these cards up for your typical auctions on eBay or any of these other auction sites or selling sites. It's work, and challenging, but it is so in a fun way, an exciting way, in my opinion. And that's why I've really gotten more and more interested in those cards here recently.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, most of these cards do not pop up on auction. Very few public sales, and yeah, most of these are private transactions, and even then, money does not often get these cards out of these collectors' hands. If you want it, you need to trade them something of equal rarity. It's how often do I find myself trying to pursue someone else's chase card so that I can then trade them that card for what I actually want. So it really is fascinating.
It is, absolutely. Okay, so I want to go ahead and make a little pivot, talking about your Kauai collection, because in particular, I believe at the National last year, you have a really interesting story of how you traded into a really rare Kauai 1-of-1 rookie card, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So yeah, I really love Kawhi Leonard's style play. I think he has a very interesting story. Won two championships on two different teams, 2 Finals MVPs, and hey, I think he's now come back into form, looking like his old self. And I mean, he just scored 44 points the other night, and I mean, he looks fantastic, right? So a great player, I think, generational talent, and I thought it was a no-brainer to decide to collect him. At the time, LeBron prices were high, Curry prices are high, Giannis is high. Durant at the time was still quite high, and Kawhi was kind of the next one up that to me seemed undervalued. So, and it was one that eluded me in my set. So I knew he was a tough autograph signer. His autographs were tough to come by. a great player, and so kind of went head first. Decided to collect him a couple years ago, and it was also because I got out of the hobby when Panini just entered, so I had very little knowledge and insight into the whole Panini era. So I thought Kauai, who spans the entire spectrum of Panini products, collecting someone like him will allow me to really learn and educate myself on the whole Panini spectrum of products over the last 10, 12 years. And so kind of skipping ahead to the National, yeah, I had an opportunity, ironically enough, in Jeff Wilson, sports card investor. He posted a video of him at Burbank card shop out in California, and he was doing a deal with the guys there, and he's trying to sell some cards. And I noticed he had the Kawhi Leonard Black 101 from Panini Crusade. And anyone that knows, in 2012, there were no blacks. Panini Prism had no blacks 101s. There was no Optic. There was no Select. There were very few products at the time. So his Crusade Black 101 was one of the very few 101s he had, let alone blacks. So I saw Jeff had it, and then during the National, leading up to the National, I kept messaging him, trying to get his attention, saying, "Hey, I know, do you still have this Kauai? I'm very interested in this Kauai." He noticed my messages at one point, and if you follow Jeff Wilson, you also know that he's a fan of signed vintage. He purchased the 1986 Fleer signed vintage set, including the Jordan, a couple years ago, and he has many signed vintage cards. So I started offering him a bunch of different signed vintage cards for potentially the Kauai, which is a very interesting trade. Some people would say it's very polarizing in the hobby, right? You take a modern 101 card versus a 40-year-old iconic rookie card signed by a Hall of Famer, right? Which would you prefer? What's the collectible value of either, right? So at the time I was really working on my Kauai collection, and I had a lot of signed rookies. So I offered him quite a few, and he was very interested in my signed Elgin Baylor rookie, inscribed as well, and it was graded a 5. So it was one of the highest graded. I was kind of hesitant to let it go, but in the end, I knew again I could pick up another Elgin Baylor signed rookie, and yet there will only be one black 101 Kawhi Leonard, actually jersey color match as well, since he's in a Spurs uniform. So yeah, the National.
Yeah, it really looks cool. I mean, I remember when those Panini Crusade basketballs came out in 2012. I really loved that insert set and those black 1-of-1s and golds numbered to 10, especially. I just thought they just looked fantastic. And so, and like you said, they're really aren't able to find his rookie cards 1-of-1s from that time period, because Panini I think was still trying to kind of figure things out and what type of products and parallels that they were going to go forward with, and they didn't do a ton of 1-of-1s for many of their products from that year. So it's really cool, and you're right, the black with his black Spurs jersey just looks really cool, and so I think it's a great trade and a really interesting trade when you think about, once again, a rare vintage signed piece that's really highly graded. And so you're probably not going to find a ton of information in terms of where the current value for that particular card is. But you also have a modern 1-of-1, which is basically the same thing, unless that 1-of-1 has gone up on a public auction like Golden or Heritage or PWCC. You're probably not going to know information in terms of what would potentially be fair value. So really, it's just like two collectors just kind of doing an old school trade of like, well, I think that this is kind of close to what this would be, and these are two so rare, unique cards that it's just almost a matter of preference at that point,
Yeah, exactly. That's how it really was. There wasn't a lot of work in valuing them. We kind of both had similar values in mind for both, and it just made sense. So we traded one for the other. It was a straight up trade.
Oh, sounds easy then. No. So, and I know you've got a lot of other great Kauai stuff, obviously, from over the years. What are some of your other favorite Kauais that you have in your collection right now?
Seeing as we're talking about the National, another Kauai I got at the National. Kawhi logo man, game used, immaculate. Great at PSA 7,
cool.
but logo man, game worn. They don't come by often, and I kind of like the red on red. It's a label card design match, if you will. Then some other cool ones. So I don't have a signed 2012 Prism base yet, but I have a BGS 10 silver. That's a Pop 6. That's one of his most
Nice.
desired rookies. Obviously, the silver back then is a very low print run compared to now. I think his total silver print run was maybe around like 200 in all grades. Whereas obviously now I think the Luca recently was like in the tens of thousands. So the print runs are obviously much larger. Let's see. I mean, I have quite a few. This is another one. Speaking of rookie year 101s, this is a rookie year game worn laundry tag. It's his only game worn rookie laundry tag, which makes me think that this is from his rookie jersey. And it's probably the only one that Panini cut up and put into his rookie year products. So that's a 101 game used laundry tag rookie year. And I mean, this is a cool one. I'll share a non-rookie, 2015, flawless 101 dual game use patch, and those.
I love that.
Because
yeah,
they just pop so well. I think that's great.
Yeah, those are all fantastic, man. Okay, so one more thing I wanted to talk about is you and I, when we met up before and had our conversation back in New York City, we really kind of talked about our love and appreciation for the 2000 era of basketball cards. And, it's the thing where there's a lot of love in the hobby given to the 90s era, and understandably, because a lot of people grew up collecting in the 90s. There were a lot of amazing, innovative things that came out in the 90s with refractors and insert sets and some of the first autographs and things of that nature. But I don't think enough love is given to the 2000 era, especially when you still had Tops and Upper Deck still kind of going competitively against each other in terms of coming up with innovative designs and products and things of that nature. And so, yeah, could you just kind of go over some of the things that you kind of discuss in terms of the things you love from that era, and some of the products and things like that that really stand out to you from that time period?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, a great topic to discuss. And I mean, for me, it's pretty easy. For me, it comes back to, hey, it was what I ripped as a kid, right? So that's when I would come out of school, run down to my local card shop, what products are there? Let me start ripping some Tops and whatever else was there, right? So I think for me, I think 07, 08 was one of the best product years ever in the hobby, right? You talk about Tops and Upper Deck, both have licenses. Something we haven't had in the hobby for over a decade now, right? Actual competition within a sport where they're competing to put out good product to win, essentially, customers' money, right? So you had some of the most unique products I think come out that year, right? So from Tops, you had Tops Letterman, you had Tops Echelon, Tops Stadium Club. Some of these products that only came out for 1 year, maybe a couple years. So to many of you, you might have never even heard of them, right? And then on the Upper Deck side, right, you had Upper Deck Premier, you had Upper Deck Black, you had Upper Deck Chronology, right? One that's very popular in the hobby. And again, Upper Deck Chronology, they only did, I believe, 1 year of it. It was only 07, 08, and yet so many collectors in the industry talk about it to this day, right? The entire Timeless Moments Panini set was mirrored after the chronological moments in that chronology set, right? So you see a lot of that hobby kind of uniqueness of 07, 08 even bleed into some of the products to this day. So I think it's just when you look back, there's so much new technology, so much uniqueness in a lot of those cards. Because again, I think a lot of it was driven that the licenses were up for grabs between the different manufacturers. They had to actually compete, put out new products. Otherwise, customers were not going to buy their products, right? And if Topps put out a new product, Upper Deck had to come out and match them, right? And there's just so much creativity, new designs, and I think time will come where that 2000s period, in my opinion, will shine as much as the 90s. I think the 90s get so much love right now because, again, the people who collected then are of kind of peak earnings age, if you will. So I think in the coming years, over the next decade, I do think a lot of these cards in the mid 2000s will also have their moment in the spotlight. And I think you're starting to see some of that already, right? Some of these, I guess some of the credentials in the early 2000s, right? Some of these early chrome refractors. And I think it's only a matter of time where some of that mid 2000 stuff begins to get a lot of hobby love as well.
Absolutely. And that was another thing too. Yeah. Like Upper Deck bought the Fleer license. And so they would put out, Fleer products every so often. And you would still get Fleer EX every year or so, or every couple of years or something. And you would still get, the essential credentials and jambalayas and things like that coming out during that time period. And they were great as well. And of course, obviously you have things like Exquisite that really, I think, set the bar for how to do high-end products. And the fact that, unfortunately, you only had like 4 or 5 years of Exquisites in basketball before Upper Deck lost its NBA license. And they kept doing Exquisite, but it was Exquisite with collegiate uniforms. And, it was still kind of cool, but wasn't quite the same. But the way the NBA license Exquisite was with those amazing patch pieces and autographs and like you said, I think there's a lot of those Exquisite cards that I think have been sort of kept away for a while that are starting to resurface, and you're starting to see like the premier patch autograph pieces of not just Jordan and LeBron, but the Bill Russell pieces, the Larry Bird pieces, the pieces that were coming out during that time period that's getting a lot of love right now and a lot of attention, even from high-end collectors and people willing to spend a lot of money to obtain those.
Yeah, Exquisite, I believe, I think by 09-10 was in college uniform. So that means from 03-04 through 08-09 would be professional uniform. So you got about 6 years there of product. And to this day, you ask most collectors what's the greatest product of all time, and most probably say it's Exquisite. So you got a product that was only out there for 6 years and has such a massive hobby footprint. And the interesting fact behind Exquisite, I think most people don't know, was a lot of it went to Asia. If anyone remembers watching YouTube videos of breakers back then, you had some folks in the Philippines ripping, I kid you not, probably 100 cases, if not more, of Exquisite. And they would just quickly just run through the cases, and they were just looking for the LeBron and Jordan stuff, right? And they'd pull Logo Man or whatever and just put it off the side like it was nothing. And it's funny, I think that one group of individuals specifically, they actually got convicted of like wire fraud and mail fraud and money laundering and a bunch of other things. And a lot of those cards have now started coming out of the woodworks. And to your point, there's massive stockpiles of some of these very rare mid 2000 stuff that I think is sitting out there that will hopefully find the light of day one day.
Hopefully. And I remember those videos you were talking about, and I kind of have a memory of people spreading the story of how, that one particular individual that like extorted like millions of dollars to basically spend on Exquisite products. And, and he literally like opened up like over a dozen cases of Exquisites, and God knows how much money he spends. And yeah, it's interesting too, because those were also products that truly had like a real limited set of cases and things distributed that you can kind of you can kind of keep track of. Even the high-end products nowadays, it's so difficult of trying to figure out how much is actually out there. And then of course it's really gone downhill in terms of actual quality, in terms of you getting patch pieces that aren't even affiliated with the actual player that's on the card. You're getting sticker autographs on a lot of high-end products nowadays. You're getting just sloppy autographs, even if they're on card autographs. They just look sloppy and terrible from a lot of players. and it's still, but the high end products are still going 3 times, 4 times more money than what those exquisite products and other high end products that Upper Deck and Topps were putting out back in 2007, 2008. And it really kind of makes you cry to think back on how things were back then and what a time it was to be a collector.
Yeah, I think exquisite retailed at $5.99 a box. Flawless is what, like 30,000 a box, a case or something like that? Like, that's ridiculous.
Oh man, yeah. It's best maybe not to think about it. So moving on. No. So, before we go, one last thing is I just want to make sure we hit on everything. Was there anything else that you wanted to make sure to mention, to talk about in terms of things you're currently collecting or things that you have that you're really proud of owning and or just things that you're just kind of on the lookout for?
Yeah, I mean, as I shared, I'm working on the signed top 75 set. I've got 3 left. So if anyone out there, any listeners have a signed or know anyone that has a signed rookie of Paul Arizon, Michael Jordan, or Kawhi Leonard, please reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram at Sasha P Cards. And yeah, I mean, I generally do signed vintage basketball, honestly, from 1948 through 1974. So if anyone has any signed vintage basketball or any questions for any cards during those years, reach out. Happy to help. Happy to talk anytime. And a fun, exciting card that I'll leave everyone with was a recent pickup a few months ago. This is actually the earliest card in my set. It's a signed 1948 Bowman George Mikan rookie card. One of my favorites. And it's got a beautiful blue ink autograph on the blue background. I think it just really pops.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sasha, for doing this interview, and thank you. A little bit more background. It took a while for some reason to get the signal working properly for this interview, so I had to relocate inside my house to a place that's a little bit more public for my kids to come in and interrupt. But they try to make their presence known throughout the interview, so I appreciate your patience. And it's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm glad we were able to finally do this.
Yeah, pleasure to speak with you, Kurt, and thank you for having me on.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
Thanks.